comes to royal fashion, what are some of the do's and don'ts? Because there are many various rules that the royal ladies have to follow. Some of them might make sense, some of them don't. But we also have something rather new, which is that with the death of Queen Elizabeth II, we have seen some loosening of some royal fashion regulations. So I thought it would be apt because I did my first do's and don'ts of royal fashion video all the way back in 2022. And I looked at it and it looked horrific. So we are going to do a brand new one on this channel. The other one resides on Royal News Network, where I provide a lot of compelling royal commentary to various royal stories. So if you guys want to check that out, a link's up above. But today, like I said, let's redo the royal fashion do's and don'ts because I have 13 rules here that seem to be ubiquitous to most royal households. Some things like we all know are sort of hard set in stone, but a couple others that I just noticed generally. I watch a lot of royal ladies, a lot of royal fashion. I've been able to pick up on a lot of different things over the years, and some things I just think are general good suggestions. Some things I see that royal ladies do that I'm like, yes, that works all the time, every time. And some other things I'm like, well, when you do that, it tends to actually not elevate your look, but bring down your look. So, guys, I hope you really enjoy this because this is royal fashion news for all those who have a passion for royal fashion. And we have so many new subscribers because my review of the inauguration video did so well. And I love that, guys, for my best and worst dress list that I do. Usually about weekly or every other week, depending on how many royal looks we have. I will start adding some members of the Trump family there as is appropriate. So excited for that because I do love Melania's fashion. And you will notice that a lot of the principles I think Melania, Tiffany, and Ivanka follow, and Laura as well, come from this royal dressing because royal dressing is so awesome because everybody can take these rules and make them shine. Some of them I don't think are applicable to most of us, like the conversation we'll have around wearing the color black. But I think so many of us can learn that when it comes to looking polished, professional, elegant, sophisticated, royalty is where it's at. Definitely not Hollywood, definitely not the Kardashians. So let's go ahead and get into this because I am so excited to redo this because I was rewatching my old video and oh boy, was it horrific. So guys, I hope you really, really do enjoy this one and I hope you learned something as well. And I'm actually did go ahead and write all these out on a Substack. I think I'm going to start. So I'll put a link in there down below if you want to check that out, where I've written down all these rules. And so if you guys want to follow, want to be inspired, go ahead and check them out. So the first two rules I would say are more royal specific, not for everyone. And the first rule is black is generally reserved for funerals and mourning. So you will notice most royal ladies reserve the color black or like an all black ensemble for very specific occasions. And that is official mourning. Like, for example, Catherine, the Princess of Wales, recently wore black to a Holocaust memorial service. Same thing for all the royal ladies who went to the service at Auschwitz-Birkenau. And they do it for funerals as well. So you will see them wear black on those specific occasions. But beyond that, black is kind of a no-no. And you see royals generally follow this. Now, we do have an exception recently. Queen Mary of Denmark wore a black velvet suit for a play she attended at the Royal Theater. So that's a bit of an exception there. But overall, most of the royal ladies actually do stick to this. And I understand. As a royal, you sort of want to be, I don't know if exciting is the right word, but you want to be bright. And this gets into rule number 2, which is to generally wear bright colors. You can love beige, but as Queen Elizabeth II actually put it, if I wore beige, nobody would know who I am. And I find that most royals do generally follow this. Beige ensembles are not usually something you see very much of. They tend to wear bright colors. And the reason for that is because when they are in a crowd and greeting people and everything, if you are wearing a bright color, you actually stick out more. So when it comes to Queen Elizabeth II, she's a bit on the shorter end. And if she's in a big crowd of people, you might not be able to see her. However, you might be able to see her brightly colored hat. And it would also help you identify where she is within the crowd. So I think that's a generally a good rule that royals follow. We have actually seen Catherine actually recently. This was well back in 2023 because it's been a while since we've seen her a lot. She actually wore an entirely beige ensemble with a beige sweater, a beige skirt. But I think generally you will see royals tend to go with bright colors like bright yellows and oranges and reds and greens and blues and all these sorts of things that make them stand out within the crowd and occasionally maybe beige. And I do want to also add another little caveat here because I think it's important to address misinformation that is out there. One of them is that Meghan Markle claims that she stuck to beige and neutral colors while she was a working royal and including black, which again, you're not really supposed to wear because she didn't want to clash with the other royals. But we sort of know that's incorrect because since she has left being a royal, all she's done is wear beige. So I have a video calling her the Duchess of Beige because she is actually herself very beige. So that is, I think, sort of a misnomer. And I believe firmly as well, though we don't have, I don't think a specific instance where the royal women have talked about or discussed this, but I believe that the women also call each other and tell each other what they're going to wear because you'll generally see them not clash with the color scheme. The exception, of course, is Meghan at her last official royal engagement at the Commonwealth Service. She wore bright green when Catherine was in red, Sophie was in white. I think the Queen or Camilla were both in blue. So Meghan was definitely clashing there because the royal ladies, they contact each other and go, hey, I'm going to wear this, I'm going to wear that. Or the queen herself might set a dress code or let's stay within this sort of color scheme. And so the next rule, and we have, and this is rule number 3, although it can kind of be combined with 4, but we're going to stick with just giving it its own, is no short hemline. So there will be no mini skirts or mini dresses within royal households because they tend to pick ones that hit about the knee, maybe a little bit higher, and then below the knee. So they won't go for mini skirt or too up the thigh. We actually did see Catherine wear some of those shorter dresses earlier in her marriage, and she did have a couple of wardrobe malfunctions with those, particularly with the wind, because wind happens to all of us every once in a while. There's also, which I probably won't be able to find, a couple of pictures of Crown Princess Victoria. She's actually getting on a boat. The wind is bad, and her skirt is flying up. And I think her sister is laughing at her. Or maybe it's Madeline whose skirt is riding up and Victoria's laughing. Either way, they're laughing about that because if you have a shorter skirt and the wind tends to pick up the skirt might go up the tush and you don't want that at all. Showing a bit too much leg. Again, Catherine had many problems with that. So it's good that she sort of retired these. She even wore them when she was pregnant, which was odd because sometimes it would pull the dress up even higher. So unless they are on their own time or just generally not working royals yet, because Catherine wore some short skirts when she was still dating William, but it all changes once you become an official member of the family. And before we move on here, in addition to no short skirts, no super high slits, because you don't want a royal lady walking and seeing all the way up her thigh. We do have Catherine that's had 1 or 2 instances of dresses that are cut rather high, but this is something you generally do not see royal ladies wear. Because as rule number 4 tells us, generally, royal attire should be modest. So you avoid low necklines, baring the shoulders, or cutouts in the dresses. Now, I know royal women who have violated all of these particular orders, but generally, you will see the royal ladies stick to this. Now, when it comes to low necklines, I feel like this one is a bit sort of, it depends on how you're built. If you are small chested, you can get away with lower necklines without having them look too bad. If you are larger chested, more well endowed, they can tend to look a bit more revealing if you have that particular, I don't know if you want to call it a problem or an asset, either way. So if you are a royal lady, generally the necklines can be a little bit lower if you're smaller chested, should be further up if you're larger chested. So royal ladies can wear things that are low cut, but tends to be a bit rare. When it comes to showing the shoulders, you see this a lot in ball gowns. Ball gowns, you will tend to see one shoulder. You will see strapless. It does depend too on the regulations of the particular event, when it comes to wearing royal orders and those sorts of things. That is a totally separate video, which we won't get into today. but you'll generally not see it. So, for example, you won't see a royal lady show up to a day event in a strapless dress, like a short, summery strapless dress. That's pretty rare. We do actually have an instance now that I'm thinking about it of Catherine wearing a strapless look when she was hosting a reception in Poland. And I remember thinking at the time, I was like, wow, that's a little pushing it. And it's just something that you just don't generally see. We saw Megan violate this quite a few times. She would wear things that were sleeveless a lot, spaghetti straps. One outfit that was completely and utterly inappropriate, and I would argue vulgar too, because when it comes to slits up the side, Meghan Markle wore one that was wildly inappropriate. It was like a beach dress, very thin, spaghetti straps, slit up way up the thigh. It was even had a button so it could go even higher. That is considered vulgar by royal standards. It just is. And so that is something that royal ladies look out for as well, and cutouts. The only royals that I've seen generally who actually delve into the cutout realm are the Spaniards. So Queen Letizia wore this dress with cutouts in it. I remember looking at the dress going, "Wow, that's daring." And her daughter Infanta Sofia, who is very young, has done similar things as well. So I find Spain in that instance rather an outlier, but generally you do not see that. You do not see that in royal ladies. So that is something they try to avoid. So, number 5 on this list is that avoid fabrics that wrinkle to look more polished. Because what you do not want to do is make your entire wardrobe linen. Because you know what linen does? Wrinkles. It wrinkles a lot. And sometimes it can look really, really bad. And I will say, and this is not to simply pick on Meghan Markle, but honestly, if you've been watching royals for a long time, she violated a lot of these rules. And she constantly and still does wear things that wrinkle. And it's something that people picked up on pretty quickly. And it's something that she continues to do because she picks fabrics that wrinkle. And it just tends to put an overall look of messiness, maybe a little bit sloppy. And it does depend a lot on the fabric. You will notice, Catherine, it's rare to find anything on her that is wrinkled. There is one exception, an outfit that she wore on a day trip, working trip that she made to the Netherlands. She had this suit from Catherine Walker. She wore it on the plane. It massively wrinkled. It just did. So that's something I'm sure she was learned from because I haven't seen that again. But as a royal lady, you generally want to avoid looking super wrinkled because it does tend to make you look a bit sloppy. Now, if you choose particular fabrics, if you have a dress that's linen, like I have one that's LK Bennett that I really like, that's linen, it just will wrinkle. That's just what it'll do. But if you are a royal lady and in the spotlight, to look incredibly polished and put together, don't wear something that wrinkles. You will notice that Queen Mary, Catherine, the Princess of Wales, I feel like are two examples, often Queen Letizia as well, who look like they put a lot of intention into their outfits and putting them together. And you generally don't see a lot of wrinkleness. So that's, I think, a great thing that we can all learn from because linen is wonderful, but sometimes it can look great. And then 5 minutes into the day, you can look horrific because all it does is fall apart as you sit, as you move various things. So, number 6, and this is another one where very much directed at Meghan Markle because she did this a lot, is that she wanted her signature hair look to be a messy bun. So, rule number 6 is no messy buns and no messy hair. And I still am completely baffled by Meghan's decision to utilize a messy bun. It looked messy. That's like the name. It looked messy. Messy buns are reserved for the gym and they're reserved for like cleaning up stuff at home. It is not suitable royal attire. You just look disheveled. And I will say the other royal woman who seems to struggle a lot with her hair is Queen Maxima. And Queen Maxima, it's kind of interesting because if she wears a hat with an updo, she looks fabulous. But her hair just seems to be very thin and it just doesn't seem to style well. And if she does her hair herself, it just tends to look a little meh. So, and a little messy. And yeah, so I think she's one to consider as well for like she really needs an updo, really needs somebody to work on her hair. Otherwise, it just doesn't look very good and very sharp. And it tends to pull down the rest of her look sometimes because sometimes her outfit can be great, but I'm like, but your hair It's not looking great. And that's one of the things my mom kept going on for me again and again and again. She's like, Brittany, do your hair well. And I did it for a long time. I finally figured it out. I will say, I'll recommend and I'll link it. I have a dry bar brush dryer thing. I love it. It gives me sort of a blowout look and it lasts for a couple of days. So that is how I get the nice little under curl to my hair and a bit of the body. Works really well. So next we have ladies should generally have clutches and top handles over crossbody. So I have an issue, and I notice this quite a bit, is that when it comes to royal ladies, you look more professional if you have just a clutch. The strap for a purse can tend to move places, and I feel like it makes the look a little bit more casual, whereas a clutch elevates it. When I think of clutch, I think royalty, and I think it really works for royalty. Although we do have an exception, which happened this week, because Catherine, for one of the first times I ever remember, put her purse on her shoulder. And you'll notice here, as she's sitting down at this event, that it kind of flops down and she's like putting it down, and I'm sure it's making all sort of clanking noises. Now, that's not to criticize her. That's just to say, I think it's nice to just have clutches because then you don't have to worry about those kind of things. And yes, it means that one of your hands is occupied, but at the same time, I also feel like it makes a lot of sense because she has to put the purse down anyways. And I don't like it a lot. And we rarely see this. Meghan Markle was one of the few exceptions. And I'm just bringing it up because she would put the bag on crossbody, which I felt like really pulled down the look because it looked really casual. She did this in Scotland. And then there was another instance in South Africa where her whole look together, I mean, it was cute, but it looked like she was going to the farmer's market. And I'm like, you're royalty. You're not at the farmer's market. You need to kind of ratchet it up a bit, just a bit. And that should be another rule I add. Maybe I will at the end. Royals should just look generally elevated. Yes, you are going to a casual event, but you need to look like the most casual, well put together person there. That's the challenge of royalty. So, rule number 8 is stick to tailored coats, avoid wrap jackets and messy scarves. So, this is an interesting one because it's not an official rule I've ever seen anywhere. But what I have noticed is that when it comes to jackets or coats, a tailored one that's not a wrap looks better because by design, a wrap coat is supposed to be relaxed, but it's tends to, unless you wrap it correctly and do everything correctly, can tend to look a bit underwhelming and maybe a bit sloppy because it's naturally slouched. It's naturally supposed to be really relaxed. Whereas you'll notice the Princess of Wales always wears tailored coats. They always button up. She rarely, I can't even think of a time she's really worn a wrap coat. And I think it's for that very reason, is that it tends to look sloppy. And that's not anything against the women. Wrap coats are great, but they have this natural design to them. And royals should always look polished. They should always look elevated. So you don't really want the wrapped aesthetic. I actually noticed this with Sophie, the Duchess of Edinburgh last year. She wore this great dress, but at the same time, she was wearing this slouchy coat. I think it was open and it just sort of looked, it pulled the look down. It did. And I've noticed this with other royal ladies as well. Although I will say there's a jacket Queen Mary has worn recently that's a wrap coat. And I think she always looked great in it. But she always is somebody who pays a lot of attention to how she puts an outfit together, how she wears it. And you will notice as well that royals tend to dress for literally the environment they're going to spend the most time in, not the moment from the car to the door or what have you. So royal ladies will not wear a coat into a facility that they're not planning to wear the entire time. And yes, sometimes they take their coats off, but usually, because I feel like it's a bit maybe unlady like, and that might sound really strange, but it lacks the regalness to watch somebody take off their coat. Yes, very dumb. I think that's a little bit of a rule though. So you will mostly see royal ladies take off their coats like in a private room or something if they plan to do that while having a longer day. I've noticed before that Catherine will start off a day in a coat and then magically it disappears, but you never see her really taking it off. And I think that's the best approach because I think taking it off maybe looks a little scattered. And you'll notice as well, Catherine, if she is wearing something, she wears that the entire time. She rarely changes it. She rarely takes the jacket off. Then there was an interesting case of Crown Princess Mette Marit of Norway, and she actually was going into an event and it was snowing in Oslo, and she walks out of the car, sans coat, in heels, walking to the door. And I'm like, okay, that I would not do that myself, but she's not dressing for, I got to put my snow boots on, then I can change into my heels. No, she wore her heels. She embraced the cold for a bit and then went into the warm building. Sometimes it's the reverse. You have to wear a coat even though you're blistering hot in it, because it's better sometimes to be less messy than it is to be just simply put together. So you have to think a lot about what you're wearing. Now, when it comes to scarves, scarves can be a great accent, but they have to be done well. I noticed recently Queen Mary, I liked her outfit, and then she put on this big scarf and it's all up in her neck and stuff. And I'm like, it kind of just looked a little messy at that point. Same thing with Meghan Markle. She did that a couple times as a working royal as well. So it's best if you're going to use a scarf, of course, use a scarf, but make sure you spend the time to make it look the best that it can. So guys, as I was going through trying to find the pictures that suited whatever thing I was talking about, because this takes a while, there's a lot of different outfits and I remember certain ones or I have to dig for ones from royal ladies I'm not as familiar with. But one other thing I should have mentioned, which I did not, which again is something Meghan Markle tends to do, and I feel like goes along with the pattern of this whole section of the video, which is more about just looking tailored in a lot of ways, is making sure your pants are hemmed appropriately. Meghan Markle has a bad habit of having her pants too long, and in this one case when she was in Scotland, they looked horrific because she was walking in wet streets. And of course, if you've lived in the United Kingdom or know anything about it, or the Pacific Northwest or something like that, or like Canada where she lived, you know that rain is a pretty frequent occurrence. So best to plan for that and not have your pants dragging on the ground to such an extent that they get muddy and dirty and look terrible. Again, it's all about thinking of the day, thinking of the possibilities, and making sure you make every moment count and you don't get caught in a bad way with your fashion, because that makes you look your best and it makes you look polished and elevated, because the whole thing about royalty is looking polished and elevated. They're not like you and me just hanging out there in our jeans. They're wearing slacks when everybody else is wearing jeans. They're wearing a business coat when everybody else is just wearing a cardigan. That's, I think, what royalty signifies to me, is that they're just that little extra step. A royal will almost always be overdressed, but in a very slight way. And the reason for that is that they are the professionals, they are leading. And so it's better for them to maybe be a bit overdressed rather than coming to an event really underdressed. But the other tricky thing, and this is rule number 9, is that royals generally cannot wear anything super expensive. Now you might be thinking, Brittany, royals wear these amazing gowns, and they do, but they try to keep them on the lower end. The Jenny Packham dresses are expensive, but some of them aren't like $30,000. Catherine's dresses probably tend to range, or the gowns tend to range from the $5,000 to $10,000 range, maybe above depending on the fabric. A exception that became quite a bit of a controversy at the time was Meghan Markle, who wore a $70,000 gown for her engagement portraits, and we've never seen it again. Buckingham Palace was asked and had to respond to this, because everybody's like, where the heck did this $70,000 dress come from? Because royals have to purchase the items themselves. They don't get discounts generally, or at least that's how the Brits do it. I think other royal families probably do things a bit differently. But they can't be seen as being too ostentatious, but they also have to look good. So there's this very careful balance that they have to walk between being royals, being professionals, but also not being so exclusive, so elite that you actually separate yourselves from the general public. What I think is actually really cool about royals is that they have the challenge of not being a celebrity in a way, because they have to constantly deal with the common man, whereas celebrities can tend to get very much up on their high horse because they can live in their bubble. Royals are not like that. Royals have to meet and deal with everyone. Ergo, they need to have a style and a royal budget that kind of reflects that. So even though Catherine and William inherited the multi-million dollar, if not close to $1 billion Duchy of Cornwall, they can't be acting and walking around and dressing like billionaires. They don't actually have access to all that cash. It's mostly land holdings that they get a revenue from. So you'll notice Catherine is an Alexander McQueen, and then she can be in Zara. Queen Letizia can be in Hugo Boss, and then in Mango, or Carolina Herrera and then Mango. So you have these different levels, and the royal ladies like to mix and match. And you'll even notice with jewelry, unless it's estate jewelry, like jewelry that has been within the royal family for a long time, they tend to wear pieces that can run in the expensive realm, but can also be very manageable. You notice that Catherine, when it comes to her more expensive jewelry, tends to go with Kiki McGonagall, which is pricey. It's in the couple $1,000 realms, but she's not spending, let's say, on an earrings annually or a lot, like $10,000 per pair on a pair of earrings. They're mostly 2 to 3,000 pounds. So that's a huge difference. There are a couple of exceptions to that, but generally that's how royals operate. So when it comes to what the ladies purchase to wear, they generally have to purchase it from the country they are from, or the country now that they are part of the royal family with, and then the country that they are visiting. So, Catherine, the Princess of Wales, you'll notice she wears a lot of British brands. But when she went to France on a little visit, she wore Chanel for the first time. So, why did she wear Chanel? Because Chanel is a brand of France. It's known for its history and ties and connections to France. So she's supporting the French economy by buying a Chanel outfit, but she also wore Alexander McQueen, which is from the United Kingdom. So interesting question will be, because I think Catherine has a great relationship with the head, or the former head of Alexander McQueen, Sarah Burton. Will she now go with Givenchy? That's an interesting question, because Sarah Burton has become the artistic director of Givenchy, which is a French brand. So it was actually quite a controversy at the time for Meghan Markle, though, to choose a French brand for her wedding dress because it was a French fashion house. So even though the main designer was British, the house itself was French. She sort of tried to make that her signature designer within the British monarchy, but I rubbed a lot of people the wrong way, because her job as a royal is not to represent the French fashion houses, but the British ones. So again, I will be fascinated to see where Catherine goes in her relationship with Sarah Burton. If some of the creations she has are strictly ones from Sarah Burton, if she'll continue to work with Alexander McQueen, if there'll be some changes, I'm not sure. But generally, that's what Catherine sticks with. She goes with like LK Bennett and Emmy London. Those are all British brands. So Catherine sticks to those and then ventures into other brands when she's traveling or when they're hosting someone. So, for example, if they were hosting the United States, Catherine might choose to wear an outfit by an American designer because she is sort of having that symbiotic relationship, because it's all about diplomatic dressing. Crown Princess Victoria has worn items from H&M. Queen Matilda and Queen Maxima wear Natan, which I believe is a designer. It's either a Belgian or a Dutch designer. I can't remember which, but there's a history between the Netherlands and Belgium. So it makes sense that they would share that particular brand. And so we have other cases as well, some brands that are very small that you might not have heard of. Some countries that's not really an option for them, like Monaco, doesn't really have designers there. So Princess Charlene wears a lot of French designers, though, because obviously Monaco is a small country within pretty much France. So the purpose and the course of diplomatic dressing is all about sending a strong message of unity, of diplomacy, and extending an arm and helping your own economy. That is what royal ladies do. So next, we get into some of the fun stuff, which is tiaras. So the politics of tiaras. I actually have a whole video breaking this down. So if you want to click on it, there will be a link up above. But generally, when it comes to tiaras, there are sort of a couple of ways things are divvied out. There are ones that are reserved for the queen. Those are generally called the big guns. Other family members have ones within the collection that are sort of designated for that particular position in the family. So when it comes to Sweden, it has been largely speculated, and I think it holds to be true, is that the Bodden Fringe is reserved firstly for Crown Princess Victoria. She will always get first shot at that tiara. I think for the United Kingdom, it will become the Queen Mary's Lover's Knot will become designated for the Princess of Wales, whoever that happens to be. And then there are also starter tiaras, smaller tiaras within the collections, ones that are personally owned. Overall, broadly. It all depends on hierarchy. Where you are in the line of succession determines which tiara you get access to. The higher up you are, the better ones you see. The lower you are, the more minor ones you have. Blood also wraps into this as well. So it has always been speculated that Meghan Markle wanted an emerald tiara and had to settle for the fully diamond tiara. Many people have thought that it was the tiara Princess Eugenie eventually wore. And if that is true, Eugenie, even though she chose second, got to choose the one and take the one Meghan wanted because Eugenie is blood royal. Meghan Markle is not. So blood factors into all this as well. And blood determines oftentimes who gets to wear what. So in the case of Sweden, Princess Sophia of Sweden, although she has her own tiara, she married the king's son, she hasn't worn a tiara like the Connaught tiara, which is sort of a special one with a great love story within the family. So she's never worn that one. She hasn't worn a couple of the other ones. She's worn quite a few, but that one seems to be one that's sort of reserved. It even took a long time for Madeline and Victoria to wear that particular tiara. So I think that's one sort of reserved for the women who are blood within the family. So all that to say, it's complicated, but I'm really excited for the Brits because it seems to be new tiara rules are coming into play. I have a whole video on that as well that I'll link, but it seems like maybe sharing will be in the future for the Brits because the Brits used to operate on a system by Queen Elizabeth gave you this tiara and this is the only tiara you use unless you purchased one was gifted to you, what have you. Seems like Queen Camilla might be changing that because although Catherine has previously worn the lotus flower exclusively, Sophie wore it last year. And Sophie used to have the aquamarine ribbon tiara at her sole discretion. And now we have seen Queen Camilla wear it. So we may see some changes within the Brits. And there is this rule that I've seen floating around, and it is actually wrong. It says that tiaras are only worn after marriage. This is wrong. So, young women from a variety of royal families have all worn tiaras before they were married after they turned 18. We saw this recently with Catherine Amalia, Ingrid Alexandra, Princess Elizabeth. We'll see it soon probably with Princess Isabella when she turns 18, Princess Alexia. We will see more royal ladies, Princess Leonor, wearing tiaras after they turn 18. And we even had Queen Maxima when she was still just engaged to the Prince of Orange, William Alexander, who's now King at William Alexander. She even got to wear a tiara at another royal event before she was married. So this rule doesn't seem to apply except for women who marry into the family of the British aristocracy. They cannot wear a tiara until they are married, which makes sense. But elsewhere, it doesn't seem to matter. I imagine, this is just my speculation, it all depends. We will probably see Princess Charlotte wear a tiara before her wedding. So, last rule that we have here, and this is one I added at the very end, is that suits are in and dresses and skirts are out. Since the death of Queen Elizabeth, who had a very big preference for skirts and dresses, we have seen Catherine wear suits a lot more. She's been wearing those quite frequently. I had actually a whole video, again, I'll link it up above, of Catherine's suit obsession. So, I think this is one that is here to stay. I think it's a very exciting change that we've seen. And I'm so looking forward to seeing more suits in the future. Queen Letizia loves her suits as well. So does Queen Mary. So most other royal households, that hasn't been a big issue. But Queen Elizabeth, she'd reigned for 70 years. And so many people were attached to her views. And her views were, I think, from a time in the past. And now we are getting this more modern royal approach. So here's our 4 rules that I'm pretty sure no longer apply within, especially the British royal family and some of the others as well. So number 1 is no bright nail polish. I think that rule has gone away. Catherine, we saw her wear bright red nail polish recently at Easter in 2023. Now that was 2 years ago, but remember the whole cancer situation. We didn't see her a lot in 2024. So that was something she did. No wedge shoes was another of the Queen's rules. She didn't like them. Catherine obviously did wear wedges, but I can't imagine that this is a rule anymore. I think the women can wear the shoes pretty much that they want to wear. Wearing pantyhose, no more pantyhose. I'm sure they were so excited they burned them. Catherine stuck to this rule very early on in her marriage, but seemed to have dropped it once she started having kids. She didn't seem to wear them that much anymore. Meghan, I think, wore it a time or two, maybe to try, but it definitely doesn't seem to be a thing that like Queen Camilla is a stickler for anything. I think it's something that naturally sort of was ebbing out and now is officially gone. And number four is wearing a hat with the queen. Now, while I imagine you still must wear hats in certain instances, I don't think Queen Camilla is requiring it maybe in the same way or seeing it in the same way as Queen Elizabeth. So we may see less hats. Although I would be very sad because I love the hats and fascinators. They're such a unique aspect of British royal life, one that even most of the rest of the royals don't follow quite as closely. So I love seeing the inclusion of the hats. They are so fun. So, guys, those are the 13 rules now that seem to be part of the new, more modern royal fashion code. So, let me know what you think. Let me know how you might incorporate some of those codes into your own life. Obviously, not wearing black is something that doesn't really apply to the rest of us, but it does to the royal ladies. I understand why, but black can look smashing. So feel free to wear that black all you want. But I think these other rules are very interesting. So, guys, I would love to get your thoughts on all this. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you again very soon. Bye.